Hello, this is Steven Nojiri, and this is another Fukushima Ninjutsu video. This video is actually a very important video for me and the channel. Remember, previously I said that I'm going to start taking the gloves off and being very candid when talking about the Nojiri history in Fukushima Ryu from now on, and that starts now. So in this video, I'm going to actually talk about the Nojiri genealogy and things about the Fukushima Ryu, which will hopefully change the way that you understand it. And for years, I've kind of danced around some of these topics, but now it's time to get down. It's time to get real with this. So the reason that I'm doing this, though, is because I simply cannot explain the Fukushima Ryu and its history on a more complex level if I don't spill the beans on the Nojiri genealogy. In other words, I need to be very direct and candid and open if I'm going to actually talk about Fukushima Ryu and its history. So let me start by just saying that the current understood, and I put understood in quotations, the understood history of Fukushima Ryu is probably, in actuality, is probably a myth. And it's a myth born from misunderstandings and bad research habits. It is a myth that may actually start in the 1700s and has only been reiterated by Japanese researchers of previous generations, and this bleeds over into modern research. Even my book, Sacred Conspiracy, which I did 11 years ago, is filled with many errors due to this myth. So let's get into this. All right, so the main point, which is broken into two truths to start it all off. So first off, I've never actually told the main history of the Nojiri. I've danced around this topic over the last decade, providing scant details here and there. This was mostly because I've been working to find evidence of the history from sources that I have nothing to do with, right? I could tell you the history, but then I would how do I prove that, how do I prove anything, right? So I've been trying to find independent sources that corroborate and verify the history. In other words, for the last 10 years, I've been trying to find documentation, independent documentation that I have no connection over. I don't control it. I don't own it. It's like documents in museums, things like that, that will corroborate and verify the information about the Nojiri history. So I have succeeded at this, and I can confidently proceed now with discussing the genealogy, because it's no longer just like my own data, but it is also supported by independent third-party sources. That is, historical documents that I don't own or control. That's one of the big sort of breakthroughs. The second point is the actual history of the Fukushima Ryu may really be different than what I'm going to start calling the myth of Fukushima Ryu. Now again, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that the story of Fukushima Ryu to this point is 100% definitely a myth, but I'm saying that I'm about to present to you a lot of information to bring it seriously into question. But in order to do that, I have to tell you about the Nojiri genealogy. But in order to feel confident about telling you the Nojiri genealogy, I needed to be able to find third-party historical documents that I don't own or control that corroborate and verify the information. Now that all of this has come together, I feel confident in proceeding forward with this. So, the Fukushima Ryu myth might just be a myth. Not that the school didn't exist, but that the origin story might be a myth. The ninjutsu is there, but again, it's the history of the tradition that may just be a story that has been repeated over and over again. So, here is the big reveal. When I say the Nojiri family, of course I'm discussing the lineage of Nojiri that my family comes from. The entire reason that I'm interested in the topic is, I'm a selfish person. I love my family and I want to know my family's history, and my family's history has shinobi history involved, and therefore I find that incredibly interesting, and I want to share that with other people who find shinobi history interesting. So when I'm talking about the Nojiri family, I'm talking about the main line of the family and the branch support lines. Don't think of it as a single line like father, son, father, son, father, son. It's not that simple. It's head of family to head of family to head of family to head of family. And that involves direct father son lines, but it also involves potentially it also encompasses branch lines, brothers, nephews, things like that. So think of the Nojiri family isn't as father son, but think of it as like the extended family is the Nojiri family. But within that Nojiri family, there is a generation one, generation two, the head of the family, the next head of the family, etc., 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 etc. Now, and when we're talking about the Nojiri, we're talking specifically about this Nojiri family that contains individuals such as Nojiri Saboreimon Masasugu, who is the third Fukushima Ryu head, and Nojiri Jiroemon Narimasa, who is the first head of the Fukushima Ryu. Okay, so we're clear about what I mean by when I say the Nojiri family. Okay, now here's the big reveal. The Nojiri family served the Mori clan of Western Japan. We did not serve the Fukushima. We did not serve the Oda. We served the Mori clan. From the 1500s until the Meiji Restoration, our Nojiri family were Mori retainers. That, what I'm saying is, we were Choshu domain samurai. This is important information. Let it sit in for a minute. We were not Fukushima retainers. We were not Oda retainers. We were Mori retainers. Go ahead and look at this map on the screens, Google Maps, map on the screen. The red star, that's where the clan begins, at Nagano. From Nagano we move down to Owari. From Owari we move over into the Osaka-Kyoto region. And then we end up where the purple star is in the Chugoku region. That's the Choshu domain, Hiroshima domain, Izumo region. In that area, the purple, we are serving the Mori. Everybody has always been assuming that it's the Fukushima because we'll get into that in a minute. But I'm here today clearly stating on the record as a fact the Nojiri clan were Mori retainers. Furthermore, in previous videos you heard me say the 13 generations of Nojiri. But this is only one way to count the generations. There's actually a couple different ways, and I'll just go over this quickly to give you an idea. So sometimes we say 16 generations because that is counting every head of the family from the founder, who is considered the first. So the first Nojiri to serve the Mori is considered the founder of the family. Even though the family goes back to Nagano, that is the history of the Nojiri in general, but this particular family line starts with the first Nojiri to serve under the Mori, and that's in the second half of the 1500s. And counting every head of the family since him, including his father, gives you 16 generations. If you don't count his father, because his father technically wasn't serving the Mori in the early 1500s, right? So if you talk with just him as the first Nojiri to serve under the Mori, then it's 15 generations. It's 14 generations if you count the founder and his father, but you skip generation 3 and generations 3, 2 sons. So basically, there's 2 heads of the family that actually died pretty young and pretty back to back early on, and so basically that's where we also get 13 generations. We start with the founder and we skip the 2 who died early. So if you include everybody who ever held the title of head of the family, you get 15 generations. And then if you count the founder's father, it's 16. But generally we say 13 generations because generally the founder's father is not counted and the 2 who died early get skipped over just for the sake of simplicity, giving you the 13 generations. So anyway, how to count waxes and wanes. Each generation sort of has its own opinion on how to count it. For the sake of ease and to lessen the complexity, in this video and in future videos, I'm pretty much going to just say the 13 generations, even though you, the viewer, can know it's actually 16. Also, proceeding forward with this and future videos, you, the viewer, may very well have the question, hey, so you're talking about these generations. Do you have data on these generations? Yes. Let me be very clear with you. Yes. Names, birthdays, death days, their roles, their jobs, what they did in their life, what their death name was, who they married, who they adopted, who their daughters married, who their sons married, all of that stuff, etc., etc. Yes, all of that. Got it all. But what I want to do now is basically say the reason that this data is important for you, the viewer, the reason it's important is because now this data is going to become critical when discussing Fukushima-ryu's history. So I'm not going to give you a complete data dump on the Nojiri family history. Don't worry, I'm not going to give you 16 generations of names, birthdays, death dates. You don't need to know that. And it's also not really important for me to just sling data out like that just for the sake of slinging the data. I respect and love my family and the ancestors of my family, and so it feels a bit disgraceful just to data dump for the purpose of data dumping. It's almost like I'm advertising. It's becoming like commodification of their memory, and I do not want to do that. So you don't want to hear me go on for hours about this information. I don't need to be doing that. So we're going to stay. So the way that we're going to stay on task, in other words. But I just wanted to reiterate to the viewer, in case you're wondering, yes, all of this information is recorded, have all this information. Over time in future videos and stuff, different pieces of information may pop up, as needed to discuss the Fukushima-ryu. But don't worry, I'm not going to just data dump you a bunch of dates and information. So anyway, let's stay on task and let's focus on Fukushima-ryu now. So now on your screen are 4 key pieces of data that you're going to need to know in order to begin to understand what we're going to talk about in terms of Fukushima-ryu. So, key piece of data, the Nojiri family served the Mori clan. But here's a little bit more information to give you some background. Initially, mid-1500s, the Nojiri are serving the Misawa clan. But as the Amago restoration, so the Amago clan is trying to restore itself in the Izumo region, and the Mori don't want that, and the Misawa don't want that, and the Nojiri serving the Misawa at the time, they're connected to the Misawa at the time, they all join the Mori clan and fight against the Amago and keep them from reforming in the Izumo region. Now after the Amago restoration is crushed, the Nojiri become independent of the Misawa, and then the Nojiri become directly retainers to the Mori. Now initially, point number 2, the Nojiri served a branch of the Mori called the Migita Mori. So you have the main family, and then you have the branch families. So initially they served under one of the branch families called Migita Mori. However, at the time of Nojiri Masasugu, so the 3rd Fukushima-ryu head, he actually served the main domain lord. He was a Choshu for Mori Yoshihiro, who was the 4th lord of the Choshu domain. So this is the main family. So Nojiri Masasugu shifts from the branch family to the main Mori family in Hagi. So at this point, the Nojiri go from serving the branch family to serving the main family. So under Nojiri Masasugu, the Nojiri become retainers to the main Mori family in Hagi. Now this is important because this gives you a very fast foundational understanding of the Nojiri's place in history from the mid-1500s to the later 1600s. And nowhere in there is there any mention of Fukushima Masanori. And to this date, there is no record of the Nojiri serving Fukushima Masanori. I have checked Fukushima Masanori retainer records and found no single Nojiri listed in any of Masanori's retainer records. And then the last important point on this page is the founder of Fukushima-ryu, Nojiri Narimasa, might actually be a transcription error. Now, you may be asking yourself, in yellow, boom, wait. You may be saying, wait, Stephen, I thought it was a fact that the Nojiri served under Fukushima Masanori. No, it has never been a fact. It's been an assumption made by Japanese ninja researchers, and it's been repeated as a fact. However, The family records are very clear. The Nojiri served the Mori clan. Like I said, I've checked every Fukushima retainer record that I know to exist, and there's not a single Nojiri listed as a retainer. Now, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, there are people on the retainer records who are related to the Nojiri family, and so that might be the potential source or connection. But it is not a fact that the Nojiri served the Fukushima. In fact, the Nojiri genealogy doesn't list any connection to the Fukushima Masanori at all, and none of the Fukushima Masanori's retainer records have Nojiris listed. It is not a fact. It's never been a fact. It's been an assumption, and it's been repeated over and over again. It is potentially, as you say, a legend, but there is no data to support it. Now, some of you may say, wait, chotto matte, kudasai. Hold on, whoa. Didn't the Nojiri serve Oda Nobunaga? Yes, a few individual Nojiri did serve Nobunaga. Just a few. However, most of them left Oda Nobunaga and went to the western region, to the Chugoku region. When Nobunaga died, as far as I can tell, there was only a single Nojiri serving him at the time of his death. Every other Nojiri was gone, and for example, Nojiri Shigemasa was no longer serving him and had gone to the Chugoku region, as one example. Some of you may be saying, whoa, wait, what about the Southern Court stuff? Yeah, it's fine. Southern Court stuff is fine. The Nojiri serving the Mori doesn't change any of that. Actually, the Choshu domain would later go on to be one of the main domains involved in the Meiji Restoration. If you know your Meiji Restoration history, Choshu domain is like absolutely pro-imperial. The Choshu domain from the beginning was anti-shogunate and pro-emperor. And in the 1800s just went completely pro-emperor and overthrew the shogun, etc., etc., etc. So imperial stuff is absolutely the Choshu domain's territory. So Southern Court stuff, not affected at all by me revealing to you guys that the Nojiri were actually Mori retainers. Doesn't change any of the Southern Court stuff. That remains the same. Then some of you may be saying, well, what about Tada Genji? Let me be very clear. The Nojiri genealogy is very clear. The Nojiri are Genji. Done. It's super clear. It's written in black and white, ink on paper. It is super clear. So yes, the Nojiri are Genji. That remains the same. Nothing changes. Now let's move on to the key point. The key point here is the idea is this. The idea that Nojiri Narimasa served Fukushima Masanori and started the Fukushima Ryu while serving Masanori is almost certainly a legend. It's probably a legend that started in the late 1700s. And it is, of course, there is a possibility it's still true, but the probability is actually greater that it is a legend. Like I said, if it's true, though, there are extra steps. So let's get into that. And actually, let's start right away with another jolt to your system. Let me be blunt. The only reason anyone thinks that Fukushima Ryu is based on the Fukushima Masanori is because the idea is based on the legend. And that legend and that idea very well may have actually simply arose in the late 1700s. Again, like I said, and later in the video I'll share with you a few explanations that might hold this true, but it is a very high probability that it is just a legend from the 1700s. The only historical documentation at all that mentions Fukushima Ryu and Fukushima Masanori is the addendum document. However, remember my previous video, the addendum document was written in the 1790s. That is decades after the transmission scroll. So for example, the scroll that I own is the final transmission scroll, and it's from the 1760s. So the addendum document is 3 decades later, so 30 years after the final transmission scroll is written, the addendum document is produced. And if you also remember from my previous video, the addendum document appears to be actually an Inko-ryu creation. And it appears that Inko-ryu may be a school that formed in the late 1700s, and it used pieces of Fukushima-ryu to build itself. So we have a document that may not actually be Fukushima-ryu, but may really be an Inko-ryu document, really, in the late 1700s, 3 decades after the final Fukushima-ryu transmission document is written. And only in that addendum document does it mention Fukushima Masanori. And everyone just assumed that this was factually true, but the reality is it might just be a legend of the late 1700s, a legend of the Inko-ryu students. So now, my viewers, behold something actually critical to consider. There was actually an entirely separate Fukushima family that served the Mori family. This Fukushima family was well established in the Hiroshima area way before Fukushima Masanori ever showed up. Consider, if you will, that everyone listed in the Fukushima-ryu scroll is a Mori clan retainer. It may actually be true that Fukushima-ryu is not based on Masanori, but actually based on the Fukushima family that served the Mori clan. Now again, this is only a theory, but think about it for a moment. Everyone in the scroll is a Mori retainer. There is a Fukushima family that serves the Mori. Also, next, Nojiri Jiroemon Narimasa, the founder of Fukushima-ryu, he doesn't actually exist on any Fukushima retainer list. Actually, Nojiri Jiroemon Narimasa doesn't appear anywhere. Now, we have a Nojiri Jiroemon on our genealogy. Nojiri Masasugu descends from him. He's around the correct time. But his name is not Narimasa. And you may, wait. Let me explain. Like I said, in our genealogical records, we have a Nojiri Jiroemon who does precede Nojiri Masasugu. All right, and he's around the right time period. And he has Masa in his name. But the other part of his name is not Nari. It's not Narimasa. But, oddly enough, the kanji is very, very similar to the kanji used for Nari. It's very close. And it could simply be that Narimasa is actually a transcription error. Because you would have Nojiri Jiroemon, little transcription error, and you would accidentally have Narimasa. It's possible. You know, I've looked for Narimasa for over a decade, and I haven't found him. But I found our Nojiri Jiroemon, who fits the bill. It's just the name is slightly different. So, 2 possibilities. He's the same person as Nojiri Jiroemon in our genealogy, and Narimasa is just a transcript error. And actually, without going into the details now, the history, the details of the life of our Nojiri Jiroemon seem to fit correctly for who Narimasa is supposed to be. So that I personally believe this is the same guy, it's just a transcription error. His name is never Narimasa. When somebody was transcribing the scroll, they just messed his name up, because everything else fits very well. But it is also possible that there is a Nojiri Jiroemon Narimasa, but that he's from one of the smaller branches of the family. And if that's true, he may not appear on any record. And if that's true, it is possible that he served Fukushima Masanori. But that wouldn't explain why he doesn't appear on any retainer list for Masanori. Unless, perhaps, he was from one of the smaller branch families and he was a Ronin. If he was from one of the smaller branch families and he was a Ronin, then he wouldn't appear. He could be easily missed from the genealogical records, and he wouldn't appear on Masanori's retainer list. So either he was a Ronin from one of the branch families, or he is the same individual as Jiroemon from our genealogy, His name's just been written incorrectly on one of the scroll's transcriptions. So basically the idea that Nojiri Narimasa served Fukushima Masanori is probably just a myth. We only have two options. Either Nojiri Jiroemon Narimasa is the same Jiroemon from our genealogy, but his name has been transcribed incorrectly on the scroll, which is possible because the kanji is super close. And if that's true, then he never served Fukushima Masanori. If he was from a side branch and a Ronin, then he's just simply lost to history. And there'll be no way to ever verify that he existed. So without that key piece of data, we can't ever really be sure. So these are those kind of data pieces that are just not there to really be sure that Fukushima-ryu is actually, for example, named after Fukushima Masanori. If Nojiri Narimasa, as that name, Nojiri Jiroemon Narimasa, could be found as a retainer for Fukushima, then it could verify that story. But right now, the closest we have is our Nojiri Jiroemon, who never served Fukushima Masanori. So, again, is it Fukushima Masanori, or is it the Fukushima family that already served the Mori family? Again, all the Fukushima-ryu shinobi were Mori retainers. And again, the only piece of data that connects Masanori to the system, really, is the addendum document claiming it, which might just be a legend. So anyway, so as you can tell, there's some plot holes here, so to speak. And unless hard data can be found to address these plot holes, it looks more and more to me anyway, in my mind, that the Fukushima-ryu is more and more native to the Mori clan. Here's some more interesting things for you to consider. So in my book, Sacred Conspiracy, 11 years ago, I was wrong about a lot of the spell's origins. I'll admit it, flat wrong. In the last decade, I've learned more about the spells, and I've learned one key detail. Almost all the magic is from the Chugoku region or Shikoku. Right? In the book I say, oh, this spell comes from here, or this spell seems to come from here. I'm wrong. It's not from Kyoto, it's not from Issei. The magic is from Chugoku, the Chugoku region, and Shikoku. Pretty much all of it is from the Chugoku region and Shikoku. In fact, I've learned where many of the spells that come from, like very specific locations, like not just generic idea, but like actual specific. I can take you to the town, and I can take you to the shrine or the temple where the spell is originated from and where the spell is actually still used in some instances. So seeing how most of the origins and the culture of the techniques from Fukushima-ryu come from the Chugoku region and or Shikoku, it really makes for the case that the system is native to the western provinces. And so then the idea, the claim that it was brought to Hiroshima fully intact from the east simply crumbles under the weight of the origin and culture of the spells and techniques, and they're being sourced from locations in the Chugoku region. So let me rephrase that. There's a lot of ninja historians who will tell you that Fukushima-ryu is Iga-ryu ninjutsu that got brought to Hiroshima. That is just not true, because when you actually analyze the origin of the spells and the beliefs and things like that, they all source from the Chugoku region. There is no way that the Iga ninja over in Iga were doing magic that is native to the Chugoku region. These spells come from the Chugoku region. And as such, again, that's what I mean. The claim that they were brought from the east simply crumbles under this data. And now you hold your hand up and you say, wait, choto mate kudasai, like stop, go back. Surely this must still come from Fukushima Masanori. I can hear some of you guys feeling this. I can hear your feelings. You're saying, no, this has to come from Fukushima Masanori. What about, and then you're going to say, what about, you talked about a Kumazawa connection previously. What about the Kumazawa connection? So let's talk about that. It's a fair question. So I say, good point. When we look at the Fukushima retainer list, we don't find any Nojiri. But we do find some individuals from families that are related to the Nojiri. the two key families here. We find Kumazawa retainers for Masanori, and we find Sakuma retainers for... Ah, yeah, that's a surprise for some of you guys. I've never said that before. This is the first time that I'm saying this. Kumazawa, you've heard before, but here you go. Wow, the disclosure. Sakuma relatives, family related to the Nojiri. So we find Kumazawa serving Masanori, and we find Sakuma serving Masanori. Both of these families have close ties, adoptions, marriages, etc., with the Nojiri. So, it may be possible that Fukushima-ryu does come from Fukushima Masanori, but that it actually doesn't really start with the Nojiri. It might actually start with the Kumazawa and or the Sakuma, then makes its way into the Nojiri family. Now, this doesn't resolve the Nojiri Narimasa name issue, whether it's just a typo or whether it's a different person, etc. But if Narimasa is a transcription error and he is our Nojiri Jiroimon, which I believe he is, then the possibility, the probability that the origins lie with Kumazawa and Sakuma retainers for Fukushima Masanori actually becomes more probable, because Nojiri Jiroimon has direct connections to these people. It could be that Nojiri Jiroimon got the tradition from, say for example, an older Sakuma relative, and then Jiroimon was the first one to write it down and turn it into a school. So it may actually be not that Nojiri Narimasa served Fukushima Masanori. That's almost certainly a myth at this point. It may actually be that an older Sakuma relative who served under Fukushima Masanori taught Jiroimon his ninjutsu, and then Jiroimon wrote down the scroll and made Fukushima-ryu ninjutsu. That's actually probable. Now again, we got some Google Map on here, and basically I just wanted to take a minute, because now somebody of course is going to say, yeah, but you have, like, you know, the main branch of Nojiri, but you have branches of Nojiri. Not every single Nojiri person. Well, basically, so on here you have a purple star. That is the Chugoku region, okay? And so essentially, well, it doesn't cover the entire Chugoku region. The entire Chugoku region is that whole arch, that whole arching the western provinces. Anyway, basically, you do have Nojiri that kind of come and go. Not every single Nojiri served the Mori. When I say the Nojiri served the Mori, I mean in the main, like 90%. Of course, you're going to get a son here or there that leaves. Somebody becomes a Ronin. Somebody goes to a different province. Over time, you know, this son goes here, this son goes here. But in the main, the Nojiri were Mori retainers. So the Nojiri that stay in this region of where the purple star is, the Fukushima, are the Fukushima-ryu Ninjutsu Nojiri. And even if they have some family members that branch out into other domains, like one son may go serve a local, the neighboring province, they're all sourced from the same Mori retainers. The only real exception to this is in the red. In 1619, a branch of the Nojiri left and went to Kishu to serve Tokugawa Yorinobu, the Lord of Kishu. Those Nojiri would actually later go on to be one of the founding families of the O-Niwa Banshu. So if you are familiar with the Niwa Banshu or the O-Niwa Ban, who go off to be like the secret police of the shogun, because these Nojiri go on to serve the Kishu Lord, and then the Kishu Lord eventually becomes the shogun. So these Kishu Nojiri go on to be founding members of the Niwa Banshu. Other than them, predominantly when you say the Nojiri of the western region, you are talking about Mori retainers. There's a few individuals here and there that do leave over time, but predominantly 90-something%, we're talking all Mori retainers. So let's do a quick review before we finish the video up. We have a few more slides. So yes, as hopefully it's in your head now, the Nojiri family were Mori retainers since the mid-1500s. There is no Nojiri Narimasa appearing on any retainer list or Nojiri genealogy records. There is a Nojiri Jiroimon around the right time who fits the bill, and his name is very similar. The kanji is very similar. There's a slight difference. So it's possible Narimasa is a transcription error. But let's be very clear, there's no Nojiri on any Fukushima retainer list. But there are Kumazawa and Sakuma on the Fukushima retainer list, and they are relatives to the Nojiri. So it's possible that they are the ones who give the knowledge to Nojiri Jiroimon, who then writes it down and forms a school. But we have no proof at all that the school is actually named after Masanori. We can't even be certain that that's not a myth, because it could be as equally possible that the Fukushima Ryu's name comes from the Fukushima family that served the Mori clan, because every Fukushima Ryu ninja is a Mori clan retainer. So the point here, though, is that it's very unclear what the origin is, because when we actually look at it, and this is why when I say I have to discuss Nojiri genealogy in order to bring these things up, because I have to tell you that there is no Nojiri Narimasa on any of our records, and in fact we have a Jiroimon who fits the bill, but his name's actually slightly different, and he never served the Fukushima. So do you see what I'm saying? So this is quite a complex issue, and there's a high probability that some of the things that people just have been believing are true are myth. And then, like I said, so I have to tell you facts from the Nojiri genealogy in order to bring any of this up. So, and you may say, wait, I want some more of those Nojiri facts, if you please. Okay, so let's do some facts. Let's go over the facts. Here you go. Nojiri Jiroimon 100% existed. But his name wasn't Narimasa. But in my opinion, Narimasa is a transcription error. His name is close. He fits the bill. His just name is a little different. So I think it's a transcription error. Nojiri Saburo-emon Masasugu 100% existed. He's documented it very well in our genealogical records. He is on the scroll as the third Fukushima Ryu head in every version of the document, but specifically in the transmission scroll. Nojiri Jiroimon is a previous generation to Masasugu in our genealogy. Like our Jiroimon is a previous generation of Masasugu, and that matches the Fukushima Ryu scroll as well. Now you may ask, what about the family that serves as the second and third head? You've got Nojiri as the first head and the third head. What about 2 and 4? Well, in our genealogy charts, it shows that those people in the second and fourth family, the family that is in the second and fourth, it's the same family, in the second and fourth position, they are on our genealogy charts as being relatives. For example, Nojiri Jiroimon's daughter marries a man from the family that the second head is from. So our charts show the same timeline and the same family connections that are on the first 4 generations of the Fukushima Ryu Shinobi no Maki. Now the Nojiri would cease to run the Fukushima Ryu because Masasugu and his son, two big people in the genealogy, his son especially. Masasugu and his son go on to serve the main Mori family. Remember when I said Masasugu gets picked up to be Mori Yoshihiro's Koshu, right? So if he's his Kosho, so if the family goes to serve the main Mori family. After he's a Kosho, he becomes an Ogumi, and Ogumi means great guard. It's horseback mounted bodyguard level samurai. And then as magistrates. There's a whole history there, but we don't need to get into that, because basically at this point, when the Nojiri begin serving in these functions, they pass the running of the school. Fukushima Ryu is passed off to the relatives, and we, the Nojiri, sort of don't get it again. We're no longer the heads of the school after that point. But the Fukushima Ryu did remain in the hands of related families. Each of the people on the list, you can track them as they're related to each other, and again, every last one of them is a Mori clan retainer. Alright, so that was a lot of information. It was a very long video. I don't know how many of you got to the end of it, but if you did, here we go. like I said, I'm posting this video to kick off the new year in a good way. This video hopefully has properly shaken your understanding of Fukushima and the Nojiri family. The entire point of this is to just shake your view, because I want to get into more complex and deeper analysis of this information, right? So when I tell you guys that this information is going to get more complex and deeper, I'm being serious. I tell you, I'm taking the gloves off. I'm being serious. So hopefully that's what this video did. Hopefully this video has shattered some of your conceptions of the Fukushima and has allowed you to think, oh wow, like there's actually something much more complex and bigger here than what I previously thought. Anyway, so please leave your comments and questions below, and I'll see you in the next video.